Dude, honestly, also the other side of this is that I don't care about this. I don't think people that do care about this in the veteran community care about it in the way that these guys are explaining it. But I also don't give a shit at all. Like I can't begin to explain to you how little I care. Oh, dude. Oh my God.
Republican politicians and MAGA pundits are running scared now that Kamala Harris has chosen her vice presidential candidate, running mate, Tim Walz. The Republicans and MAGA are trying to paint Tim Walz, this guy who was a veteran of 24 years, a high school football coach, a guy who hunts, as this crazy radical socialist. And so far, it's not working. It remains to be seen if this will be effective for the Republicans. But so far, these attacks on Tim Walz are not working. And they're just continuing to make Republicans look weird. Because Republicans are weird. Hasan Piker had some great examples of this. I'm going to show you guys some clips. Let's get into it.
Oh, God, here's another charisma suck.
And I think to myself, you have a vapid San Francisco Democrat leading the ticket, and now they put in this guy, Walz, who's basically an Ilhan Omar-style, very leftist Democrat from Minnesota, has the most liberal record of any.
Expect Ron to hit the Groyper post
Is that what the American people want? The San Francisco experience where homeless are defecating in public on the sidewalks? The Minnesota experience where cities are burning down? And Governor Walz was derelict in his duties to sit back and allow those cities to burn. Kamala Harris was egging it on, and she even raised money to bail people out. So yes, a Harris-Walz ticket is Make America Burn Again. But I watched his speech, Sean, and this guy's a shyster.
Jesse Waters bitching about stolen valor.
People take that very seriously. And for him to say that, you know what, I made the decision to not go on this deployment, before I knew I was going to be deployed. Remember back after 9/11, Judge?
Dog, you literally are a f***ing liberal arts major. Like, shut the f*** up. You didn't do anything.
We were talking about in 2002, the midterms were about going to Iraq. Right. 2003, we were in Iraq. This is 2005. If you are a reservist, you know you're going at that point. Right. And to say, I didn't know in the timeline, he is a liar. And people take this very seriously.
No, his unit was not deployed. What the f*** do you mean? And he was running for Congress.
The truth is that Walz says he earned the rank of Command Sergeant Major, which is the highest enlisted rank, Greg. But he served as Command Sergeant Major, but he didn't stay in that role long enough to keep that title when he retired. So he lied about that. I mean, that is an out-and-out lie. And it matters to a lot of people.
Yeah, it does. A lot of people may be ambivalent about this because they're not in the military. But it cares to the people who are in the military. They do care about this. So you have to respect that opinion. I like that he said he would ban the very weapons that he carried in war, which means no weapons. So I can go and get a tank. But
dude, honestly, also the other side of this is that I don't care about this. I don't think people that do care about this in the veteran community care about it in the way that these guys are explaining it. But I also don't give a shit at all. Like I can't begin to explain to you how little I care. Oh, dude. Oh my God.
Now, Hasan Piker is being really dismissive here, but I think he has a point. I don't think most Americans, even a lot of people who were in the military and are military veterans, really see this as a big deal. He wasn't like he dodged the draft like Donald Trump. Tim Walz was in the military. He was in the National Guard for 24 years. And what's being reported is that he retired 2 months before his unit was called up. And in hindsight, most Americans think that going into Iraq was a big mistake. So I think somebody who served for 24 years, retired 2 months before he was going to be called up. It doesn't seem to be any evidence that he knew they were going to be called up. So this is not a big deal, I don't think. The Republicans are going to try to make it, but I don't think it's going to work. Right now, of the four candidates, Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, J.D. Vance, Tim Walz has by far the highest approval ratings. He's really popular.
An American, if you understand the sacrifice of the military and what people were voluntarily signing up to go do in Iraq and Afghanistan in 2005, 2006, after 9/11, this should enrage you. You should be demanding answers, and there should be a thorough explanation.
And I think a lot of people would say, why was the National Guard having to go and fight in Iraq anyway, instead of staying here to protect Americans?
Did run for Congress on this, and he continued to lie about the theaters of war that he said that he served in. Inside Walz's unit, which he did not deploy to Iraq with, J.R. Salzman, who was in the unit, lost his arm. There are big sacrifices that were made.
Dude, this is opening up perhaps one of the best slam dunks of all time. Walz's background in the Senate, or Walz's background in Congress, in the House, is filled to the brim with insane, like, goodies for the vets. His job was literally to deal with vets. I cannot comprehend how these guys are running this line without even like doing a quick Google search. He literally left service after 24 years, ran for Congress, and was in charge of veterans in Congress, where he passed a ton of bipartisan bills for veterans in Congress. Is so funny. Like here, Walz's U.S. House tenure, bipartisan bills, and a focus on vets and farms. This is also part of the reason why I think he's such a good VP, because the VP controls Congress, right? Kamala Harris, not exactly great at doing that, but Joe Biden used to do that for Obama and did a very shitty job at it. Walz was elected in 2006 to represent Minnesota's 1st congressional district, was particularly active on issues before House Agriculture and Veterans Affairs committees. He also sat on the Armed Services and Transportation and Infrastructure committees. During his dozen years in the Capitol Hill, Walz developed a reputation for working across the aisle while supporting his party's priorities on healthcare and the Iraq War. Walz, who served in a rural swing district, was rated as one of the more bipartisan and effective members of the House during his last term in the chamber. Walz was ranked as the 88th most bipartisan out of the 436 members who served. He earned an even higher score from the Center for Effective Lawmaking, a partnership between the University of Virginia and Vanderbilt, rated Walz as the 7th most effective among the 203 Democrats in the House in his last term. Here are Iraq concerns and ACA support. Walz joined Congress halfway through the President George W. Bush's second term, when there was divided control of the government and significant frustration about the war in Iraq. He ran on an anti-Iraq war ticket. During Democrats' weekly radio address in January 2007, Walz said that as the highest-ranking enlisted soldier to ever serve in Congress and a veteran who served in support of Operation Enduring Freedom, he shared many voters' concerns about the war. Our military men and women know that it is their duty to execute their mission without question, but so too is our duty to question the mission on their behalf. He was an anti-Iraq war veteran for 24 years. In 2007. We are in 2024 when there's like 8 people left that believe the Iraq war was justified. But back then, not exactly the most popular position. Requires bravery. He co-sponsored.
So great points from Hasan Piker here. Tim Walz, this guy that the weirdo Republicans and weirdo MAGA pundits are trying to paint as this crazed socialist guy, was a military veteran who was fighting for veterans in Congress while he was also fighting against the war that the veterans were being, that the soldiers were being killed in. And at the time, that was a courageous stance to have on the part of Tim Walz. And now everybody views the Iraq war as a bad idea. Donald Trump, he's backed off on that some, but in 2016 talked about this a lot, what a waste of lives and money the Iraq war was. So this guy isn't the radical that the radical right is trying to paint him out to be.
Sponsored several bipartisan bills addressing the structure of the VA in the months that followed, and voted to approve legislation overhauling aspects of VA healthcare after being named to the conference committee that negotiated a final version of this bill. Make no mistake, he said, the bill isn't perfect. It will not solve all of VA's problems, but it does allow us to take a step forward in reforming the VA to provide veterans and their families real solutions. Walz said in a statement, he would go on to see the top Democratic seat on the VA committee a few years later, eventually securing the title of ranking member during his last term in Congress. Tennessee Republican Representative Phil Rowe, who was the chairman of the panel at the time, released a written statement that he was thrilled to hear that my good friend and fellow veteran was selected by the Democrats as their top member on the committee. Walz has been a tireless advocate for veterans. I know he will continue that fight as a ranking member. I look forward to working alongside Rep. Walz as we strive on both sides of the aisle to improve the lives of our nation's heroes. The rest of the stuff is like on farming bills. But overall, he was primarily concerned with vets. He was primarily concerned with healthcare. He was primarily concerned with veterans. So the idea that this guy's like service should be called into question is fucking ridiculous, especially when you're running with a president who has also benefited from not being in politics when the Iraq War was happening and literally chirped at Hillary Clinton for being supportive of the Iraq War while he claimed he was a peaceful dove who was anti-Iraq war. What are the Republicans doing? It's just so bad.
Selecting Tim Walz is another sign that she doesn't care what the American people think. She is only in this.
So we have here the top weirdo Republican of them all, J.D. Vance. The poster boy for Republicans are weird.
To obey the far left radicals within.
Yeah, no, the far left radicals that are like regular American doctors, nurses, plumbers living in the far left radical dystopia of Minnesota, dude. Do you hear yourself? The far left communists of Minnesota.
All right, Vivek, let's get your take. Greatest contributor to the Democratic Party is the media. We have Kamala and Tim in their own words. It is the most radical candidates to ever run on a major party ticket for the presidency and the vice presidency in this country. And yet they go completely unvetted. They have a media that is compliant, an extension of their press office. Your reaction to it, and how does the Trump campaign deal?
Or maybe, I'm going out on a limb here, maybe people don't think it's radical to feed children and do paid family leave. Like, on its face, this might be a unique proposition, but I don't think people think it's that radical.
Deal with that challenge. It's a challenge.
Look, part of this, Sean, is the consequence of the fact they laid a trap for us. And the trap was this. Joe Biden was the nominee, such that for the last 18 months, Republicans have focused our financial and political capital on attacking Joe Biden when he's not the nominee. But because the press is the one that criticized Biden in that last month, here's what they've done. They've banked some artificial credibility with the public. I've talked to many independents across the country, and their main pushback on the idea that the media is biased is the fact that, no, they were just criticizing Biden as recently as last month. So in some ways, we were led into that trap, and now it's up to us to find our way out of it. Here's that path, Sean. I think that we would make the same mistake again by just obsessing over the candidates instead of following a 3-word formula to win this election. Focus on policy. Focus on our own vision for this country. What do we actually stand for? That makes the other side irrelevant by comparison. That's our only chance at success, and I think it is going to be our winning.
He's not wrong, but herein lies the problem at the heart of the Republican Party, which is what policy? That's the issue with the reactionary message, right? You don't really have a policy to stand on. Mass deportation of migrants, that's a policy that Trump is advancing.
Path to success, but we got to learn from our mistake last time around to correct it this time.
See, I think if this election comes about their radical extremism on immigration, on law and order, or the lack thereof, and defund, dismantle, no bail, if it becomes about no fracking and no drilling and energy, if it becomes about their economy and their economic policies and their new Green Deal desire and a 70 to 80% tax rate and taxes on unrealized capital gains, small business and corporations which don't pay taxes, and about America's role in the world, it's a slam dunk. They can't win. But bypassing this almost impenetrable wall of the media is hard. They're corrupt.
Of course it's hard. But you know what? We're running to save a country here, Sean. So that work is cut out for us. The question is whether we rise to the challenge. Seal the border, grow the economy, fight rampant crime in this country, and stay out of World War III. If this election comes down to those 4 things, we win this handily. If it doesn't, we lose this. I think those are our 2
It's crazy when he's not talking about like Reddit takes about, limiting our commitment to Ukraine so that we can create a new allegiance with Russia against China, the greater enemy or whatever. He's actually right. Like, none of this stuff is bad. He's not wrong. He's fear-mongering, but even then he's doing it in a smart way.
Choices. The reality is the voting public's not going to be voting for Tim Walz, so I think this news cycle is going to go away regardless in another week. But what is Walz's select...
Make no mistake, I don't agree with anything he's saying. He's an idiot, but this is the correct way to campaign if you're a Republican. He's not wrong.
Actually tell us. It teaches us about Kamala Harris and how she'll make decisions as a U.S. president and to which wing of her party she actually bends the knee. And so this has opened up. This has been exactly what we needed. It has given us the reset we needed in this race to refocus on policy. They've served this up. I think it was a great gift making Walz the vice presidential nominee. Having given us that gift, now it's up to us to receive it and use that to actually offering competing visions for the future policy governing the United States.
I think they're baiting the Democrats to retriangulate triangulate and act like they're moderates instead of just saying like moderates on whatever the Republicans consider to be moderate, which is really stupid. Instead of saying, what are you talking about? We're feeding children. That's a moderate position. That's not a radical position at all. You are the radical if you think that that's insane. That's the reason why I think they're going ham on this, like, oh, they're doing a socialist ticket. Your Rage read a list of Walz policy last night, not knowing anything about him, and was like, these things sound really good. Yeah, that is the average person, dude. The average person's opinion when you put a laundry list of shit that this guy has done in Minnesota is not going to be, wait a minute, what about trans genitals? God, it's like, I'm going to cry. For 10 years, I have endlessly, ceaselessly, almost every single day advocated for exactly this. The idea that if you run on these good policies, you get them, you push for them, and you actually successfully implement them, people will go, well, that seems like a good idea. I want that.
So I agree with Hasan Piker on all this. And what he was saying there with Vivek Ramaswamy, Vivek is not incorrect on the things that he was saying either about that the Republicans, that Donald Trump should run on policy, and all of the other Republican politicians and pundits are begging Donald Trump to do the same, but he can't. He can only focus on his petty grievances and calling Kamala Harris names and all of this. He can't focus on policy. And that's why, he's down right now, and he's probably going to lose. And also, like Hasan Piker said, these things that Tim Walz did while he was in Minnesota, the governor of Minnesota, free school lunches for kids. The vast majority of Americans are in favor of that. Tuition-free college, paid family leave. All of these things are very, very popular, except with these extremist Republicans. And that's where you get into the Republicans are weird thing that's been so effective so far for Democrats and Kamala Harris's campaign. They're fighting against all of these things that normal people want, and that's why it makes Republicans appear to be weird. So they're floundering with everything. All of these things that they're trying to do to attack particularly Tim Walz are just not working. He's really popular now, and he seems to be getting more popular, whereas J.D. Vance, childless cat lady guy, started out unpopular, and he continues to sink the more and more he talks. But what do you think about what Hasan Piker had to say about this and how conservatives and Republicans are afraid of Tim Walz, and they don't know how to fight against him? Do you agree with Hasan Piker? Are Republicans weird, or do you think that they're right in how they're attacking Tim Walz? Is he actually this crazed radical socialist? Let me know in the comments. Make sure to give me a like and subscribe. That helps me to grow the channel, make more content like this. This is Chris on Culture. I'll see you in the next one.